Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for joining. Just give us a couple minutes and we'll get the GenesysGo team here and kick this off. All right, good morning, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well and happy early new year. We're joined here with Frank from the Genesis team and David as well. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yeah, can hear you just fine.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining. Yeah, let's give it maybe another minute to let some folks trickle in and then we'll kick this off.
Sounds good.
How's everything been? I assume pretty busy with the token launch next week.
Yeah, it's hadn't been slow, that's for sure. But it's been good. It's like with most everything else when you're building in blockchain. It's a ton of fun.
Yep, ton of fun answered problems that you're solving for the first time.
Hmm.
Alrighty, it is 5 p.m., so let's kick this off. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Milan from the Orca team and pretty much lead business development for Orca. And we're joined by the GenesysGo team, Frank and David. And they're here to chat about GenesysGo, the shadow token that they're launching next week. And I'm really stoked to have this conversation because I think that this team sits in a very unique position in Solana where they have infrastructure level view of kind of everything that's happening. So I think they'll be able to provide a lot of really good insight and probably have the best expertise in terms of Solana infrastructure and the actual core tech underneath the chain that's out there. Hey, Frank
Yeah,
and David,
really.
do you guys want to
I
intro yourselves real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Frank, one of the co-founders of GenesysGo. My partner Steven and I we started building on Solana about 10 months ago or so. Started building validators, moved into building RPC servers, and now are kind of moving up the software, the infrastructure stack into building out decentralized storage.
Awesome. Um, yeah, so I'll give you guys the quick structure for this. It'll be pretty casual, but we're planning to hold this AMA for about 30 minutes, and we'll cover a few of the more basic questions up front and then open it up to the audience to ask any questions that you guys have for the team. And for any questions, please just ask the question. No backstory. Just kind of want to move through as many questions and get as much knowledge out there in as short a period of time as you can. So please, if you're invited to speak, just ask the question to the team, and they'll try to provide as much detail as they can. And we'll be recording the audio for this and posting it to the Orca YouTube. So if you can't make it or you want to listen to it again, don't worry, there will be a recording and it will be posted. So Frank, why don't we start with the basics? What are the highlights of GenesysGo for a crypto newbie who's just getting in? Because I know you guys do a bunch of things like validators, RPCs, NFTs now, which are really, really cool.
Yeah. So to kind of hit the high points, so we're an infrastructure project on Solana, meaning that if it's part of the structure that actually powers the Solana blockchain, we probably have our hands in it in some way. So we build validator nodes, which those are the machines that actually build the blocks and take your transactions and ensure that they're valid, and ultimately create the actual Solana chain. But then just above those, there is what's known as the RPC layer, which is a network connectivity layer that we also build. We at this point, I think, power close to, if not more than 50% of all traffic on Solana. And basically, RPCs, you can kind of think of them as traffic controllers for the validators beneath them. So they make sure that the flow of requests that the validators are getting, they make sure that they're structured and ordered in such a way to not cause congestion. So those two things, without RPC servers and without the validator nodes, the Solana blockchain literally wouldn't exist. It wouldn't work. Recently about 2 months ago, we launched an NFT, the Shadowy Supercoder, which kind of as a quick aside, it's we're not so much an NFT project as we are an infrastructure project that has an NFT, but we basically use that as kind of a big experiment to allow people who don't get to participate early on with in like the business cycle of a project and the life cycle of a project. Gave NFT holders the opportunity to participate in the early stages, where it's mainly just VCs getting access to seed tokens, and then being heavily rewarded for their ability to kind of step in and take up some risk. And so we wanted to open that up to everyone, and that was kind of the creation of our NFT. Was meant for it to act as kind of an access card, a key card, if you will, saying if you hold this, then you get access to some of the seed token allocation for our upcoming IDO, and really what we're doing kind of post IDO, which is I'd say is partially built, in the process of being built, is moving into decentralized storage, or is what we're kind of calling proof of history powered storage, meaning it's a decentralized storage option, similar like Arweave or Filecoin, except it's built specifically for Solana, and that's something that doesn't currently exist in the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah,
I really
I was trying to condense it too.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean the shadow drive layer sounds really interesting and definitely something that's needed on Solana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean 50% of traffic is pretty insane on Solana. Because I remember us
Yeah.
chatting maybe 6 months ago, and even though you guys have been running validators for a long, long time, this service was kind of just starting up this year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'd be really curious. I'm sure most people know that Solana is awesome, but kind of what got you guys and your team to choose Solana and build and really commit to kind of scaling this chain versus anything else in blockchain?
Yeah, frankly, because of how difficult it actually is to do so. Like you said, Solana's it's not really like anything out there. The proof of history consensus mechanism, which that's the CPU, right, the actual driver that builds blocks and makes Solana so unique, is relative to other consensus mechanisms on other blockchains, really cutting edge. And the ability for Solana to do some of the things that it does in regards to how fast they can send transactions, how cheaply, how cost effectively they can be sent, doesn't exist elsewhere. But it also requires some pretty intricate hardware, some knowledge, some pretty intricate knowledge of that hardware, and we're big hardware nerds, and so we've heard about this blockchain that could power 50,000 transactions per second, and required some pretty beefy hardware that really captured our attention and made us kind of go, well, why is that? Yeah. And the more we dove into it, more we were like, yeah, this is super interesting. The chain itself fills a really important niche role amongst blockchains, in that it's the only chain that can send a ton of transactions, really lightweight transactions, really quickly, which especially for like traditional finance, businesses that focus on sending they do a lot of transaction volume. That's absolutely critical.
Yep, and I think pretty much all the folks in the mainnet beta validator chat in the Solana Discord are all hardware nerds. So it's a good group of folks to be around with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So I definitely want to talk about kind of the token and you guys' IDO in a bit, but
Mhm.
first, you mind giving an overview of the team? Because I know you guys have grown quite a bunch and brought some rock stars on in the past few months.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's obviously myself and Steven, we're the founders of GenesysGo. Initially it was just the two of us building RPC servers, and that was definitely doable as a two man job. But when we kind of identified this opportunity around decentralized storage, that presented a huge opportunity and a really neat challenge. And so we obviously went out and got found some people that have backgrounds in that space, and we've met a lot of really just amazing people in the blockchain space. So recently we brought on Levi Cook, who I don't think he's a stranger to anybody, given how active he is in the broader community and how much he's helped many projects along the way. And Levi has a deep background in software development and building distributed databases. He's got background working on InfluxDB, deep background working on Ethereum, and so there's a lot of skill sets that Levi brings to the table that are critical for future success. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to have him on as a part of the team. And then as I brought David. We also brought on, and David has some pretty deep roots in the blockchain space. It's very well thought of in several DAOs around both the Solana and Ethereum ecosystems. And so David's been tremendous help in kind of getting the word out, and honestly taking a lot of the weight off of my shoulders in terms of just like running some of the broader day-to-day aspects of the business. So yeah, but the two of them have just been absolutely wonderful. And then we brought on probably at this point two or three dedicated engineers that again have deep backgrounds in building on Rust, which is the native language for Solana, and basically programming languages that are very, very close to the actual hardware themselves.
Yep, no, that all makes a lot of sense. I was working on a similar kind of staking operator a while back, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the same challenges. So I'm sure you guys are running a lot of Kubernetes and Helm charts.
Yeah, that resonates with us just a little bit. It's a lot of swarms, and a lot of chasing prom tail logs, and yeah, but it's fun. I think you get in some really cool spaces when you start to play around with like what hardware actually does, and the restrictions and limitations of like the actual machines themselves. You get to solve some really cool problems.
Yep. um, cool. So I definitely want to dive into the shadow drive that you guys are building.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks don't really understand the problem that it's solving, because it's
Hmm.
kind of a newer problem, where the first problem was, can you get a blockchain to work and can you get consensus to work? And now the second thing is that can you read the historical data and can you ensure that that data is actually accurate and what happened on chain? So would you mind giving a quick overview of the shadow drive and then how the token kind of ties into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, you're spot on. I think the Solana team built an amazing CPU. They built it's this amazing processing unit that super fast, and it also spits out a ton of data, right? And to your point, it's like, okay, once you've reached the consensus on a block, what do you do with that data after the fact, right? And there's some kind of interesting philosophical questions around what's more important, right? The present or the past. And Solana because of how fast it is and because of how big it's scaled and how quickly it's scaled, it's kind of become a chain, a blockchain with a long-term memory problem. In that, right now, blocks are built and they're stored, on in the ledger, which is stored on the hard drives of the individual machines. Well, the problem is each individual machine fills up this hard drive every 6 to 8 days, and once the hard drive's filled, like once a validator's hard drive's filled, it just starts overwriting it. So the Solana team kind of had to make a quick pivot, and brought spun up a Google Bigtable instance. So basically, any storage or any transactions that are older than about 6 to 8 days, if you're trying to call a historical transaction, like basically look back in time and go back down the blockchain, and go like through each block that's on the chain. Eventually, you'll start pinging the Solana Google Bigtable, and that presents an interesting situation, right? Because I think a centralized big tech solution is kind of opposite the ethos of
Hmm.
Solana's decentralized, censorship resistant thesis. But it's also a little bit of matter of necessity, because existing storage solutions, like Arweave, for instance, they can't handle Solana's throughput, and they can't handle the amount of data that Solana produces. Right now, Solana produces, I think it's 10x more data than all of Arweave like has stored combined, and Solana produces that like we store that on the Google Bigtable.
Hmm.
That's pretty huge, right? So that means that Arweave ends up not really being able to be a solution. And the Solana team is very focused, obviously, on building the proof of history out. We're in the mainnet beta, right? It's called the mainnet beta for a reason. There's patches. They're focused on the CPU, and what we kind of set out to do is we realized that somebody needed to build Solana's hard drive, basically, and part of the reason that is because the Google Bigtable instance, it's not immutable. It's not people can change it. It'd be difficult, sure, but the whole value proposition of blockchain, right, is that the data is stored forever, and the data is immutable. It cannot be changed. And so as we were creating, because we had to clone Solana's Google Bigtable, and we worked very closely with Solana in order to do this. We had to clone Solana's Google Bigtable in order for like our RPC network to be able to serve historical transactions. Well, now that technically means that there's two different versions of the Solana blockchain existing on two separate bigtables. And the problem is that there's no bridge. There's nothing that preserves what we've coined as the integrity of the consensus, meaning that the data that's passed through the Solana validator network, and the validators have agreed, they've come to a consensus on the fact that, yeah, this data is good, this transaction's good, this needs to be included in the chain. Well, there's nothing that maintains that consensus once it's in Bigtable, and so that's effectively what the shadow drive is designed to solve. The whole project, if you will, is we're calling it the Shadow Protocol, because it's meant to be the shadow of Solana. It's meant to, where Solana goes, so goes the Shadow Protocol, right? Because we're powering the RPC network that powers Solana. We're building the hard drive and inserting it into the Solana machine. So as Solana grows and scales, so does the shadow network, so does that RPC layer, so does the shadow drive, that hard drive layer. And really it's about it's about helping the Solana team complete their work on the chain, so that way they can continue focusing on fine tuning this speed race car of a consensus mechanism they built.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. I'm wondering, so practically for the folks that'll be running this validator per se on the Shadow network, kind of what's
Mhm.
the overview of that? So you're contributing your compute power to this network and mainly storage. And in return, you're getting a shadow token as the utility token for this network. And then that token also serves a mechanism for slashing, kind of like a traditional blockchain like Solana.
Yeah, yeah. So that's exactly right. You kind of think about it a little bit like this. Right now on Solana, if you want to contribute compute, or if you want to run some kind of hardware to help the Solana chain expand, the only way to do that is to spin up or to create a Solana validator, right? That's the only way at the moment where you can contribute compute, run hardware for Solana, but also receive some type of reward for it. What we're doing is, as I say, as we're kind of like finishing out the architecture of the chain, so to speak. We're incentivizing the contribution of compute power and the contribution of storage power to the RPC layer and to the storage layer. So what we're calling shadow operators, people that operate nodes as a part of our protocol. They're able to earn emissions in the form of shadow tokens. And what's cool about it is, like for people who they want to run a validator, right? But the whole thing about, well, if I run a validator, then I have to burn like 1 Solana token per day in vote fees, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of prices them out of being able to run a validator, right? Because they don't have the thousands and thousands of Solana tokens to plunk in there and just watch them get burned away while they try to aggregate stake. We're setting it up to where shadow nodes and being a shadow operator is effectively an alternative. So that way you can still contribute to the expansion and the scaling of Solana, but you're able to do it in a way that doesn't require as much, let's call it as much risk, let's call it,
Yep.
because what you're doing is, instead of having to, like with a Solana validator, you have to spin up a machine and then actively go try to aggregate stake, try to get people to stake their Solana tokens with your machine and still maintain your machine. What we're saying is, you know what, just maintain your machine. Let's build a kind of more of a proof of work style, right? A passive style of mining, which is really what proof of work is. And reward you just for contributing compute and maintaining your machine, and allowing Solana to continue building blocks as fast as it does.
That makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I think it's really cool that you guys are bringing the proof of work concepts over to proof of stake chain and
Thank you.
letting people contribute in kind of both ways. Because proof of stake is very capital heavy.
Hmm.
Proof of work is very kind of technology and like physical capital heavy.
Yep.
So being able to do both on Solana, I think will definitely attract a bunch more folks that are interested in hardware at the level that you guys are and are experienced at that level as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have, I think it's something like 20 alpha testers in our test pool at the moment, which we'll be reopening that up here in the future. But the 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 response that we got when we said we were starting to look for alpha testers was pretty crazy, actually. There were uh, probably, I'd say at this point, with the amount of DMs I've gotten, we probably could have easily opened it up and had 100 people like just immediately come online, which the Solana validator network has something like 1,600 validators in it. It's like all together, and we basically had 100 people that were wanting to run shadow nodes just from day one, and so we anticipate the ability for our network to scale pretty quick. The demand's already there, the interest is already there, which which is super exciting for us.
Awesome. Um, we have about 10 minutes left, but I have
Yeah,
two more questions for you, and then I
mhm,
definitely want to open it up to the audience.
for sure.
Uh, so yeah, what can folks do with the shadow token? I guess if you can give the details on it. So
Mhm.
when's it launching? What can folks do beyond kind of earning shadow for providing compute?
Yeah, so the token launches. So our IDO is on Jan 3rd, starting at like I think it's 2 p.m. UTC. Post IDO, you'll do a couple of different things. Of course, there will be the Orca double dip pools where you can stake your token, which we are super excited and super grateful to be a part of.
Same here.
Yeah, no, sincerely, the team was we were all super excited when we got the confirmation that that we had gotten everything finalized. But yeah, so you'll be able to participate and stake the shadow tokens that you get from the IDO into the double dip pool, and then ultimately the ultimate utility of the token is meant to be is meant to have a similar utility as let's say like Arweave or Filecoin,
Hmm.
in that you use the token to get access to general storage, right? Where so we kind of have this like phase one of we're solving a problem for Solana, right? We're solving a problem for the Solana blockchain specifically in and of itself. But there's a bigger problem, there's a broader problem that the ecosystem faces, right? Is like anybody in the audience who has tried to upload NFT metadata has experienced, right? Like there's nothing worse when you're trying to do a NFT upload and you find like we start spitting out transaction errors, and God forbid then you have to like pay again in order to resubmit those transactions. But it's super frustrating, and I've actually seen projects have to delay because Arweave's architecture and Solana's architecture doesn't quite play well together. Arweave is, don't get me wrong, like Arweave is a phenomenal chain. This is all simply about whether or not something plays well with Solana, and in this case, it doesn't. So ultimately, what the use case for the token, and this is kind of where like I said, we start drawing some parallels between like Arweave's tokenomics or Filecoin's tokenomics, is allowing that decentralized storage space to be used by individual like projects, individual users. Ultimately, as we move forward, IPFS, for instance, or Filecoin, for instance, is doing a lot of really interesting things around uh, building out layers, connectivity layers where developers, can come in and just build on top of it. And so, we're building out an architecture that basically sets the developer community up to access the storage, access the massive torrent of data that Solana, spits out every second, and then kind of allow them to use it as a playground to build whatever layers they want to see on top of that storage solution. So it's and again all of that ends up being powered by the shadow token. So it's very much meant to act in a similar fashion as Sol does for Solana, right? In that Sol powers transactions on Solana, and Shadow is meant to power the interactions in the Shadow Drive.
Awesome. No, that's super detailed and ran into pretty much all the questions that I had.
Good.
I can ask you a bunch more, but I definitely want to open it to the audience. So if anyone in the audience has a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'll invite you to speak. And yeah, please do only ask the question, and then we'll let Frank answer it. So go for it.
Let's go. Dang, I did that good of a job.
Maybe. Let's see. I do have one question because it was something that I think is unique and like kind of more farther out in the future for
Yeah.
decentralizing all DeFi projects. But
Mm-hmm.
we talked a while ago, and it was kind of the concept of pushing OpEx to the user rather than the DeFi protocol or a dApp like Orca itself taking on that operational expenditure. And I think for the folks listening, basically what that means is that when you interact with an app like Orca or any decentralized application, you are paying a transaction fee for the Solana chain, but there's a bunch of infrastructure costs that still goes on in running the website, in making API calls, doing database, etc. So what GenesysGo has an idea of is that you can at least take the RPC call portion of that and the fees that you're paying, and a user can essentially cover the cost of that. And it helps to promote decentralization because you can get away from all centralized servers. Do you mind just expanding on that? Because I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no. So you're pretty much there. It's so the key kind of component to decentralization, or really, I guess I should say, the key component to like Web3, is the notion that, unlike Web 2, which only allowed access, it incentivizes like access to all information for all people. Web 3 has a lot of interesting mechanisms to promote its expansion of that, which is that everyone should have access to the information and everyone should have the ability to potentially own part of that, right? So Web 3 is all about access and ownership. And I think there's kind of a tendency for us to bring over a lot of like Web 2 kind of legacy business mindsets in that, if you and I are if I'm a service provider and I'm going to give you a service, you need to give me, whether it's a token or, fiat payment or something, you need to give me something that you and I agree on as it has, hopefully equal value, because you can take that service, and if you paid me $1 for it, your hope is that you can take the service I provided and use that service to go make yourself like $1.50, right? So it's kind of this very like zero sum game. But Web3 gave us, it showed us this really interesting new dynamic, right, where you can introduce a third party to that. And in this case, it's whether you call it a community member, ecosystem. Partial owner, like whatever you want to call it, but it's this third party that basically is coming in and saying, you know what, yeah, I'll contribute my compute, right? Like look at the case of Bitcoin. Bitcoin miners, they contribute their compute, which means technically their costs for them are, like it's their electric bill, right? But the costs are so fractional or so minute that they end up kind of being insignificant to the user, because the rewards that are being given to the user to that community member are much greater, right? So you end up in a scenario where you can have a service provider, let's say such as GenesysGo, who is powered by a decentralized network of RPC servers, and each individual server each individual server operator is focused on their machine, covering the cost of their machine, and they're getting rewards that outweigh the cost of the machine. But then you have this really interesting scenario where now you have potentially the user of that service, right? In this case, let's say Orca, who is using a free RPC network, and at that point, the project's not having to pay a cost. The provider's not having to pay a cost, but what the provider is doing is giving to, let's say, to that operator something of value that is greater than what the costs are of running, the equipment that the operator is running. And so I think Bitcoin, or just blockchain in general, gives us this really interesting case study in what's possible when you take expenses to things, take OpExes, and boil them down onto such a level where it's literally just on an individual by individual basis, and you start seeing where something that would cost thousands of dollars per month is instead costing somebody a couple dollars a day type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that makes tons of sense, and it's on demand. We do have a question from Travis. So Travis,
Yeah.
I'll let you speak. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So I just had a quick question. It might be a fundamental understanding thing, but so if Solana, Solana does have this issue, right? They remediated the issue with Google Big Tables, and then you're proposing a secondary solution, right, with the shadow token, and I think it's a really interesting and viable solution. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were around because Solana being in beta and they've recognized this as an issue, if there's any potential for them to remediate this issue themselves on the base layer, or if you think that there is really no chance of that doing that, and you're filling that slot with this protocol.
Yeah, that's actually a phenomenal question, and it hits to kind of the Solana team's core ethos on things, and I find this so great and so fascinating. So, about a week ago, or about 2 weeks ago or so, we were on the weekly or monthly validator roundtable call, And one of the validators was making making a comment about how there were things that they wanted to see done differently and so on and so forth. And the Solana team was like, that's awesome, we love it, like run with it. And the validator operator got so granular as to point out that the information on one area of Solana's website was outdated. And the response from the Solana team was like, thank you, but could you like submit a GitHub request? Could you push that to us on GitHub? Because we'll update it, right? Solana's mentality is, they're building a consensus mechanism. They built consensus mechanism, and they have this, like, I think this is kind of one of the strengths of the Solana community. They have this mindset of, all right, we're going to provide everyone with this I don't know, playground of sorts. And now we're all going to, as a community, like build into it together. And so like the Solana team they're super open and accepting of anyone coming in and saying, you know what, we figured out a way to do this better. One of the at one point I was actually told, like, if you guys figure out a better way to do RPC configs, and you fork and change the RPC configs, like, that's all. We'd love to see somebody do that. We'll give you, like, we'll give a grant for that. And storage is no different, right? Anatoly was kind of in I want to say it's 2019, maybe 2019. Anatoly was doing an interview, and somebody actually asked him, like, asked him about storage in Solana, and Toly was like, like there's already so many great storage solutions out there. Like, why invest time and resources when there's already time and resources that have been invested into this? It just so happens that the connectivity didn't kind of quite transfer over one to one. So it's all that's kind of all that context around the Solana team's mindset is that they want to see the community come up with solutions like this, and they don't that frees them up to focus on what they do best, which is improving on proof of history. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to, like, kind of step up and say, like, kind of and make the claim, like, we're sticking a hard drive into Solana. And what's been awesome is, like, the Solana team has been incredibly open and very welcoming to us, like, taking on that mission. Same thing with RPC servers. It was same thing. We got going and we started building RPC servers. They were like, great. We don't want to have to mess with this. Go build, like, you're part of the community, like, make this better. So at no point do I like worry that the Solana team is going to, like, step in and kind of be like, yep, we're now working on this. And that was actually, like, the first question when we started down this path. We identified the problem. And then, first thing that we did was actually set up a meeting with the Solana team, because I wanted to ask specifically, like, are we about to start recreating work? And the answer was no. Like, go for it. We love you. Please keep going.
Well, thank you very much for a really thorough answer. And I think what made it click for me was your addressing the RPC server issue, and that they said, right, thank you for that RPC server service, and we are not going to step on your toes on this. I think that translates directly to the solution that you're proposing, and I really appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate the question. It was great.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for the question. Any other questions from the audience? Just raise your hand and we'll invite you up. And in the meantime, Frank, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to share with the audience?
Let me look at my list. I think, I think there's, oh, wait, did we get somebody?
We did. KV.
Okay.
KV, cool.
Yeah, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Hey.
Yep.
All right, yeah, so I have two questions that both should require short answers, and they're both kind of relevant. So I've heard you speak about proof of work, and when I think of proof of work, I think of people throwing compute at something, competing and trying to come up with a hash to produce a block, etc., sort of in the context of Bitcoin. Is that sort of the thing we're doing here, or are you sort of delegating data to store to people? So that's question one. Question two is, I don't actually know how compute and carbon intensive storage is. I know Solana Foundation was very excited to announce that Solana was carbon neutral for 2021. Do you suspect that the shadow network does have significant emissions, and are you planning to do anything to stick to that ethos of being carbon neutral?
Yeah, so both great questions. So I think the first question, the first question is I think probably just a slight difference in usage of the nomenclature. Because you're right, to your point, when one of the aspects of proof of work is more of the competitiveness of how, can you build blocks or solve algorithms faster? When I use the term proof of work, I'm more meaning it to apply to the fact that you plug in a computer and you passively, you as an individual, right? You as a person, you plug in and you passively just let your machine do what it does. And you make sure your machine is, has the uptime that it needs, and that it's functioning well. But what you're not having to do in proof of work is do anything more than provide compute and provide efficient compute. And so I think that's a fair point of clarification, because I think the big difference for proof of stake is you're having to effectively you're doing everything that a proof of work chain is doing, in that you're providing compute, you're providing effective compute, and you're still competing to build blocks faster than other validators, except now you have the added layer of having to go and aggregate stake. And so for us, it's about that stripping away of the need to go aggregate stake, and I guess the term, kind of calling it proof of work on a proof of history chain, is as close as I can get to connecting the dots for people as to what that may mean. But that's a fair, like I said, it's a fair point of clarification there. And then as far as the carbon neutral piece, so that's actually pretty cool. So the Solana Foundation has a thing called the Solana Server Program, which we were kind of the, I don't know if you call it like progenitors of or the guinea pigs for, but we've been deeply entrenched in that program and with the foundation for a good while, and so we were pretty excited too when the foundation released the information about pledging to be carbon neutral, and the nice thing is that means that as we're working through bringing online shadow operators are coming online, they're using Solana server program servers, which are, they're sourced and curated through the Solana Foundation. And so it's kind of nice because there's some good synergy there that, as someone who is pretty climate conscious myself, it doesn't raise any red flags for me, I guess is the way to say it best.
Awesome. I didn't know that about the Solana kind of group of validators. That's really cool.
Yeah. It was here, what was that, a couple weeks ago, I think? A week ago?
Awesome. Any last questions? Otherwise, we'll let the great team go. And yeah, anything else that you want to share, definitely go for it before we wrap up.
Yeah, I think, it's going to be, I think the last thing I'd share is the shadow drive for us, the storage piece for us is just one in another step. We started with RPC servers, and those servers, it's like I said earlier, that's kind of one layer of the infrastructure stack. There's the storage piece, which we're tackling now, but there's several other layers in the networking stack that we plan to jump into and push and decentralize, and feed out to shadow operators in order to just continue to further the decentralization of Solana. But I think one of the things that I think we're most proud of, and this is it's going to be what Stephen hits on tomorrow as he's doing Tech Talk, is we're very execution focused. We like to ship. We like to get product out there, get services out there, and prefer to focus on like solving a problem, focus on creating things that the users, like the end user, is going to actually be able to like see and experience, as opposed to kind of playing in the space of academia. And so I think the Shadow Drive, Shadow IDO, for us, that's all just one more step in a continued expansion, because once you solve RPC, which RPC servers are no longer a bottleneck for Solana. RPCs haven't really, at least ours anyways, haven't thrown an RPC centric error in months, which that means that even the times when the Solana validators are having issues, that means that the RPC layer is solved. The storage layer shortly to be solved. But there's a whole other bunch of stuff. As you think about like what happens with a data packet from when you click on a request, and that request goes to a project and goes and then just kind of like goes through the chain until it gets to the validators. There's a whole bunch of other layers in there that we plan on tackling that will bring some additional interesting use cases for the Shadow token. And really, that's our as we think about like the token, the IDO, and everything. Our number one focus is like to not release a token or coin that is decoupled from the services that we provide, which I think is something that you're hard pressed to find with a lot of other projects, in that they have multiple use cases for something. And I don't know. I don't see how Solana as a chain, Solana as an ecosystem can continue to scale and expand without more focus on what utility we're all bringing. So that's kind of the last little bit I think that we didn't have a chance to touch on. But other than that, I think I'm good.
Awesome. No, it's very evident that you guys ship, and you definitely ship really fast. And I'm really glad to hear that pretty much the decentralization and the shadow layer is like phase one, and then just continue with the shadow token for decentralizing every other layer.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. No, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you all in the audience for listening and dropping questions. Keep an eye out for next week. We'll have a bunch of announcements. We'll be launching Shadow USDC, Shadow Soul Pools, as well as the IDO on Monday. So we'll drop more details as we go. And yeah, thank you, team, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having us. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Milan.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one, all.